And today, basically what we wanted to do was go over the permitting process. There was a time during the budget hearings when you guys came up to present, and there were just a lot of basic questions that we didn't want to spend too much time during budget hearings to discuss. So really just an overview of your permitting process. And then whenever we have questions, we can kind of dive into it just so we can have a better understanding of how you guys are working now. So today we have Counselor Hogan. Counselor Driscoll is here. He ran back to make some tea. We have President Hudson, myself, Counselor Allen, Counselor Green, and Counselor Schultz. Director Jake, I always call you Jake, so I'm sorry. That's all right. And Medea, am I saying that right? Medea? Okay. All right, so you can go ahead and just jump right into your presentation, and then we can just, I know sometimes they like to wait until the end to ask questions, but if you don't mind, if we can do it kind of informal, if we do have questions, can we just jump in?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, it's his teeth.
Required committee.
I'll wait for Counselor Driscoll to get situated. Okay. Well, thank you again for having us today. I think that this would be a great opportunity for us to have an informal discussion, an informative one to overview the permitting process, what we do, who we are, and have opportunities to discuss. So please feel free to jump right in. My approach to the information today is really largely laid out, starting with people, process, and technology. Core tenets everywhere else, but really bring to life what we've worked on, what we continue to work on, and how we operate. Starting with people, we're located at City Hall Commons. For those of you who are not aware, we're located in room 101 on the first floor. Feel free to visit us. I know we've had a couple of visitors over the past couple of months. Things have been a little bit tricky during COVID, and I do apologize for the angle. So thank you for bearing with me. If you can send your constituents to our permits email account or have them call our main line directly. So I've provided that information for you up front. Otherwise, we are very engaged with our constituents, and both Jake and myself field calls and emails all day, every day. So if appropriate, please feel free to send them our way as well. That said, I wanted to provide a basic overview of our operations. So we sit under the Neighborhood and Business Development umbrella within the Division of Code Enforcement, and we're formally the Central Permit Office. Under the Central Permit Office, we have a couple of different functions, one of them being licensing, right-of-way coordination, periodic inspections, permit reviews and inspections, and then separately project management. Within those operations, I've also included the number of staff who support those functions. Some of you may be familiar with those individuals already. If you have any questions about those operations, I'm happy to answer those as well, because those are pretty high level overviews of our operations. Makes sense?
Can you go and, so I see the periodic inspections.
Sure.
So what's the difference between those and the regular inspections?
So periodic inspections, this is a new operation. So we absorb 2 positions from the Division of Code Enforcement. So it entails our periodic inspection coordinator and administrative aide. So they process rental registry applications, certificates of compliance, certificates of inspection, certificates of adequacy. That were formally and informally kind of functioning out of the Code Enforcement Office. The reason why we absorb these functions is because it allows us an opportunity to be more accessible and public facing. We have direct access to the public up front. It also enabled us fast track to digitize these applications as well, to allow another pipeline for submission, and then in order to increase compliance, which we've had great success with, and more interaction with other individuals in our office as well. Jake, if you have any other.
Yeah, if any of you recall, like Rich Decker, he was our solo person in the rental registry office. It wasn't in a great location. It was on the 3rd floor outside of my office. So we thought the move down to the permit office was the best for the public. But also, as Medea said, and I'll mention it again, the move to online applications and payments has resulted in a big increase in compliance with rental registry. Now, we still have a ways to go, but we've taken compliance rates in the last 2 years from, I believe it might have been single digits or very, very low teens to just above 50% right now.
That's
And
what I was gonna
you know,
ask.
we had a record-breaking month. I think it was a month ago, or it might have been 2 months ago now. We had over 700 applications online, paid for and submitted online, and that was the largest month total of payments and applications ever in the history of the rental registry program. So, like I said, we're still not satisfied with where we're at with that, but this move is allowing focus on that with a go-to person for anybody, not just rental registry. As Medea mentioned, this is for any ongoing inspection that you need periodically, that's required. You know, CFC is every 3 years now. We changed that with your approval last year. Rental registry is every 3 years. Certificate of use is every 2 years. That's a business license. So all of that is now coming out of the permit office instead of a random room on the third floor in codes.
Okay, you answered the question, because I'm glad to see that we're up at least 50%, because I know the numbers were extremely low. So do you think by the end of the year we'd be where?
We set an internal goal. I made the internal goal, I'll say, for the office, 75% by
that's
January 1.
Okay.
Yeah. And we do have a public-facing digital kiosk on our first floor, which then enables us to turn applicants right over to the kiosk and have them submit digitally if they're not already submitting a paper application and walking in with the application in hand, which helps for permitting needs, but also for compliance for our periodic inspections.
And how is the compliance on the certificates of use?
So that is, we can have a separate conversation, but I'll cover it as best I can in a summary. Those aren't always dictated on a codes inspection. Like sometimes we have like somebody owes like a water bill, the owner, so we can't issue the business the license, and that holds it up. We're working on revamping that entire program.
A water bill on the property or their personal water bill?
Say that again?
A water bill on their personal water bill?
No, no, on the property that they're located in. So the ordinance is written a little wonky, where it kind of has different options to hold both the proprietor of the business and the building owner. Sometimes they're the same, but a lot of times they're not. So it puts business owners in a tough situation where we're like, well, we can't issue a license because your owner owes taxes.
Right.
So they pass an inspection, but if you look on the data end, we haven't issued a certificate for it yet. So we're going to try to clean some of that up on the front end with approvals, and that's a work in progress. But we started focusing on CFCs and rental registries first because that's where people live and sleep. And I made that our focus, a little less than 2 years ago now on the focus on what we were going to work on for periodic inspections. Now, CFU is still on my board. If any of you visit my office, it's still up on my board as a to-do to revamp, but it's in progress.
Could I just want to, just Medea, when you said 12 people on the permit review, is that all folks from your office, or is that interdepartment?
Just folks from our office. Yep. And
Because that's the main thing I run into, and I know Heather's in the back here. Main thing I run into is that review of, before you issue a permit to the other departments.
yep.
That's the issue that I know you've been trying to streamline it quite a bit. but-
Correct. So my next slide covers our cross-functional operations. That 12 covers our plans examiners, our permit technicians, as well as our inspectors.
So that's all your people, so.
Correct,
Let's
yep.
go to the next slide.
While
Let's go.
she's doing that, I do want to point out, because a lot of these changes happened during COVID, and we actually wanted to do a meeting like this, I think a year and a half ago, but we did switch our inspectors out of code enforcement to, we have straight permit inspectors that it's all they do is commercial inspections for electrical, HVAC, and building, and that's new within the last 2 years. So it's a focused team of inspectors for development.
And prior to that, it was just all one stable of codes/permits.
Right, it was codes inspectors were doing all the permitting for everything. Like, I could go from a tenant complaint for bed bugs to a brand new construction site, to a rent, to a CFC, to a C of U. We have a team solely focused on only commercial permitting inspection. So they're working with the contractors, the developers, the project managers, establishing those relationships. And that's all their focus is on development and inspections and getting places open.
But you still need a waive off from other departments, like
Correct.
department.
Correct. This is just an internal change within codes and permits to dedicate inspectors solely to permit inspections, only for code enforcement for building, electrical, HVAC.
Yeah, and I'll just add that all of this was happening with little to no communication or the existence of project managers, but also the plans examiners. So we have 2 commercial review teams that are dedicated to all commercial projects. We have coverage from our office with plans examiners, building inspectors, and electrical inspectors. We have coverage from fire prevention with a plans examiner who operates and sits out of their office, and a plans examiner out of the zoning office. And then to support that, we have a life safety plans examiner who reviews fire alarms, which largely complement our commercial development projects, but not necessarily all consistently. These folks work together, they sit together, they review plans in collaboration with one another. We meet several times a week. Building inspectors, they're usually out in the field for the majority of the day, but they do sit alongside the plans examiners, and on a daily basis they interact, ask each other questions, but also field concerns where we have plans perhaps that deviate from construction that's taking place out in the field. All of this fosters incredible collaboration, and quite frankly, I can't imagine a world where this doesn't exist. It's siloed, and it doesn't make sense. It makes sense for the folks who are reviewing plans and the folks who are inspecting these developments to be working hand in hand alongside one another, breaking down the silos and consistently collaborating so that we don't have those breakdowns in communication, at least internally, where we can control it.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
The plans examiner, is that your person? for
Yes.
Fire prevention?
Oh, for fire prevention, no.
That's
No.
the fire department person?
Correct,
So
yep.
he's not located in your building, or is he?
He is. They sit together. They do not operate out of our office. So they would sit within the fire prevention department and report to the deputy chief.
So it's not siloed at all, because they're over in that fire department.
Yeah, aside from reporting, they work alongside each other on the same projects. Yep.
Because a lot of times that waive off is what prevents a building from going forward.
Right. The common denominator here would be the senior project manager that's managing the project. And we have currently 1 vacancy for a senior project manager, but in an ideal world, we have 2 senior project managers that manage all commercial projects.
So the senior project manager bird dogs these
Correct.
projects. So
Yep.
he'll call up the deputy fire chief who's in charge of fire prevention and say, hey, I haven't got this checked off yet.
Yes.
It's the way it's supposed to work.
Yes.
Doesn't work like that.
It depends. We try our best. Our collaboration is important to us. Our professional relationships with other departments are important to us, but our constituents are also important in their projects because we have a direct impact on business and neighborhood development, as in the name.
Excellent answer.
So that said, we can jump into process. So a couple of things that I wanted to highlight that many people actually do not know are how many and what types of permits we actually review and approve, and then what our performance looks like around that. So we have 55 different permit types that we review and approve, 44 license types, and 5 different periodic inspection types. That said, we issue about 3,900 permits annually, and about $180 million of construction is permitted annually. Something to note here that this year, to date, we've permitted $258 million worth of construction, and that is an all-time high. So we are busy. I know you all see it in the field, but this hopefully brings in an objective number to what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. Our volumes are completely unprecedented, and we're trying to move swiftly to accommodate requests. And we're really happy to see this development taking place. I personally do truly feel that we are on the cusp of all new things coming to Syracuse. Anything to add? Oh, good. All right, so another process that I really wanted to highlight is our commercial permitting process. So this is where, in terms of permitting, where you all are getting the most complaints, concerns, inquiries all together. And so I think it's important to highlight all of the different phases of commercial permitting, starting with project registration. So the project registration form, and I do apologize because it's a little bit difficult to see here on the PowerPoint. All of our commercial projects are initiated by means of the commercial project registration form. That lives directly on, thank you.
Oops, sorry. Trying to focus it better.
When we booked this, the iLab wasn't done yet, so we do apologize. We're happy to answer any questions, but I'll let Mediha go through this, but before she does that, one quick comment. Comparing to where this is today, which she's about to highlight, I want everybody to remember where we came from, because progress to me is looking back on where you started. And 4 years ago, this idea, this dream started with me standing on this table, like literally standing on this table right here. And we've come from that day till today in under 4 years, where it was a scattershot of paper, large paper plans with no coordinate. It was the sloppiest process I've ever put my hands on. And you can't even find a roll of construction drawings in the permit office now. You can't. I wish I could find a photo. I can probably find one from about 4 years ago. If you want to visit, you will not find a large set of construction drawings in the permit office today. We're totally digital. And that is a massive accomplishment in a pretty short time. So I know it's easy to forget, and I hold myself to high standards, and so does Medea, and so does our team. But I just want to highlight where we've come from and where we're still going, because that's important.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, my previous stint on the council, it was a total crazy, mixed up way to try to get things done. And you have come a long way, and you know what I really like is you're aspirational and you want to keep on getting better. So that's a word I learned yesterday from so I'm using it every chance I get, We have aspirational budgets here too sometimes.
No more $10 words, Hogan.
Throw you a curveball every once in a while, Driscoll.
So I would like to second that. If you are interested, there are some snippets of our office as it was 3 or 4 years ago on the city's YouTube page, where Jake was introducing digital permitting. So if you're curious, I do also talk pretty openly about how much I detested the Slim Jims on the counter. So if you entered our office about 3 years ago, we had quite the showing for you, even on our counter alone. But some of these approaches are pretty granular, and that's what it takes to make this operation great. That includes from the moment that somebody walks into our office or submits an application, that we're putting our best face forward, and that our monitors are not sitting on project spec books, and that we're pulling, all of the little things matter. So aside, we're striving small and large, and that's just one of the many things that we've done in the last couple of years.
If I this is just a point. I think you have a tremendous long way, and Heather and I talk about this every once in a while, but is there a chance that at some point it seems like whenever there's an issue, I hear the same names involved, not on the city side, but on the private side. It's usually the same architects causing the same problems, because they don't know the process. So would it be worth it, like having some sort of like maybe educational type seminar with these architects? Because they're the ones submitting the plans, and they're usually the same. I know the names.
We've done that before. We're looking to do that again. We actually, maybe 2 years ago now, we presented to the local AIA chapter on some process with code enforcement, and they actually got professional credit for it as design professionals for attending. Without any design professionals in the room, I'll mention they go through zero education on code enforcement. It's amazing. You walk out with a stamp and you can design whatever you want. They've learned little to nothing about what the building code says, let alone the New York State building code. So there are some challenges there, but we are looking to continue to engage with our developers and our design community on making this process as efficient as possible. Because as you said, Counselor, it's not solely one-sided. There's a lot of uncontrollables, and we're trying to get a grasp of that and collaborate, because in the end, it's better for the city. It's better for everybody sitting in this room and everybody that's ever going to live here or visit here.
Yeah, and we
I
did.
actually think, sorry, that's a good idea. Like, I know we do, over at my job, we do like contractor breakfasts when all the contractors come in, and if there's new programs that we're rolling out, or right at the beginning of our program year with all the SHARP grants and things like that, you just bringing them in. It's like a light setting, so it's not like you're pointing the finger saying what you did wrong, but it's more so this is how the process is working. Even if you did it, you know, during the winter, maybe when the construction season isn't as busy, just kind of bringing them in and introducing them to some of your staff. I think that'd be a good idea.
I mean, it gets to the point where a developer will come to me with an idea, saying he's getting it all together. I'll ask who the architect it is, and sometimes he'll say the architect, and I'll bang my head against the table almost, because I know it's something that's going to involve a mix-up somewhere, you know.
And processes change, so when you guys do change the process, or you're doing it to make it better, but it just has to be communicated. A lot of these contractors, developers, architects, they've been around for years. So if they're used to doing something the same way from 10 years ago, and now y'all coming in changing things, like it's kind of like bumping heads. So maybe it's worth the while.
If I may, so one of the things that I've had the privilege of since I've been in this position is we all know that we all hear the complaints. You don't hear the compliments. I do get emails from developers that since they've changed this process, and because of the outreach that they've done, where the developers have outreached and said, hey, we just need to provide you with the feedback and the fact that this works better than we've ever seen it before. Wow. So it's really been fantastic to have those, and you know, to be fair, it's the ones that have been most critical, but then also willing to provide feedback in what in the system design that Medea and Jake have done together. So they turn around and they're like, oh yeah, this stuff moved through at a speed we never thought the city could do before, and we know that what was approved is going to be safe for the people that occupy that building. So that work is ongoing. To your point, it needs to continue to be ongoing. I'm incredibly encouraged by the feedback that's been shared on the work that the two of them and their teams have done.
And I know it must be nice not having to bring all those triplicates of all of the drawings.
Yes, yes. So I would love to take you up on that offer to do further engagement. We did have more recently, now seems distant, another informational session with our all of our commercial community, so not necessarily just the design professionals. It was an informational session back in 2020. It was a virtual session. Since then, we've done a couple of ad hoc engagement sessions with specific project teams and organizations. For example, we had one with Hainer Hoyt, and more recently we've been engaged by VIP to do the same thing with them as well, and we plan to do so. And where I've seen consistent bottlenecks, I have also proactively reached out to organizations to try to foster at least an environment, but if not an informational session, to walk them through the entirety of the process. I haven't always gotten positive feedback, but we at least try, especially where I can identify repeat problems. So that said, jumping into the commercial permitting process, all of our permit requests are initiated by means of the commercial project registration form, coupled with the code review form, which provides a standardized code review for our plans examiners to review projects and complements the plans that are being submitted. From there, we then have a project manager who engages the applicant to schedule a virtual intake meeting. When we initiated these intake meetings, they were happening in our permits conference room, in-house, in person. Since then, during COVID, we've adapted a virtual meeting style, which works really well. We've been able to eliminate all of the unnecessary coordination. Mind you, we do have some applicants who are coming to the office out of the city, out of the state altogether. So it's been easier to foster collaboration that way. And the intake meetings are not necessarily unique to the city of Syracuse. This is a best practice that was pulled out of the permitting priority area, and many municipalities across the nation host intake meetings or their equivalent. From there, we have the digital submission of the plans and associated documents. Throughout the review process, we have plans examiners who are reviewing the plans and project managers who are actively managing the projects and serve as the main point of contact between the city and project teams. From there, we then move into permit issuance, where permit reviews are finalized and permits are issued and inspections are scheduled as needed throughout the progress of construction. When a project is completed, it is closed out and a certificate is issued. Depending on the project, it would be a certificate of occupancy or completion, and that is when the project is fully, officially, formally wrapped up. So I know that you all might be familiar with bits and pieces of the process, but I thought it was important for you all to understand how it moves from start to finish.
Before questions, I just want to add, this is an extremely sophisticated project management process, including not only just the process, but the tools that we use. Everything is accounted for at all times, where it stands, who's it's with, what we're waiting on. And if you don't believe me, bring in an expert on project management. I guarantee you this will blow them away, how sophisticated and how in-depth this process is. I guarantee it. I couldn't do it, but that's why we hired Medea. But it's agile, it's modern, it's transparent, and it might not be sexy to the outside world, but this is what I envisioned 4 years ago, and it's where we're headed, and it's where we're continue to grow. But this is what actual digital transformation in government looks like, right here.
Jake, what's the timeline normally for the intake meetings between when the registration happens and the intake meeting?
So response is same day, ideally within the hour. And then our goal is to schedule these out between 1 and 2 business days. However, depending on volume and time of the year, it can be anywhere from the next day or up to 2 weeks out is the farthest that we've had it within the last couple of months, where we're ramping up for the summer. We do have some projects that, like an interior demolition, that does not require an intake meeting, so not all projects go through an intake meeting. It's a smaller percentage of all of our commercial permitting, but it does happen where we can issue it over the counter, so to speak, and process it within the same day or the next business day. So great segue into project management. I think, well, first of all, this is my baby. I feel very passionately about everything that we've done so far. In terms of establishing a project management office, we didn't have a formal project management operation within the city until we started applying project management methodology to our permitting process. It is sophisticated, and it's not, Counselor Driscoll dropped by the other day, so he had an opportunity to have some insight into what that looks like. But there's a lot of thought and effort that goes into making sure that this is a well-oiled machine, starting with the project managers themselves, and that they do exist. It's not just a project management tool or a couple of best practices pulled together. It is a comprehensive approach to making sure that we have a project management office established and that it continues to function well. So that said, we have the intake meetings, which I spoke about daily, multiple times a day. We have our huddles, which are our opportunities to connect. I sit in on the huddles with the plans examiners and the project managers. Those happen Tuesday and Thursday mornings with each commercial review team to make sure that everybody's on track for their reviews. If there are any problems that exist, that we can quickly cover them. A stand-up meeting, if you will. And this keeps all of our team as accountable as possible. In addition to that, the project managers have refinement meetings each Monday and Wednesday prior to the huddles, so that these meetings are well orchestrated, that they're organized, that there are concrete objectives, so that we're not just meeting for the sake of meeting, and that they're putting thought and effort into planning these meetings. At the end of each week, the project managers meet with myself for a weekly retro to look at the week in review. How are we doing? Are we seeing any trending issues emerging? And what these weekly retros do is they really inform all of our continued evolvement. So if we're seeing the particular trends, do we need to intervene? Do we need to tweak the process? Is there something that's coming up routinely? And at least anecdotally, I will say that there's not a week that goes by that we don't change something. Not necessarily visible to the public eye, but to us internally. If not every other day, at least weekly, we do put some effort into evolving this process and tweaking something. So it's and this is how it needs to be. This is not something that would bode well for our operations if it were to go away tomorrow. It's a living organism that needs to continue to grow.
Okay, I got another question.
And be fed.
In that the mid-review meetings.
Yes.
Pre-develop. Now, if there's an issue with something that's maybe not it's under your control, but they're aware of, like sewers or engineering or fire, do the people who are the developer, are they aware of that before we get into the pre-development?
So it depends on the size of the development. For our larger commercial developments, a lot of it is plug and chug. It's the same requirements, it's the same guidelines, and they have a plethora of individuals on design professionals. It's typically not just one design professional who's involved.
Moving along.
So it's still moving along. So the mid-review meetings are meetings that we recommend if we see that there is a particular code issue or an issue that we can't seem to figure out independently. So it offers an opportunity for city team and the project team to meet to discuss the issue. And they've been really effective in problem solving, so that we can get all the applicable heads in the same room to discuss the issue and hopefully move forward productively. In addition to that, we do have review team touch bases on a quarterly basis where the project managers meet with the plans examiners to go through their operations, think about anything that has been problematic, but also emphasize anything that any standards that should be met, so that we don't have further silos again created, and that we have an opportunity for them to voice their concerns, their issues. And we thought this cadence was most appropriate based on how evolved our project management operations are. And within this whole operating system, it can be very disruptive when you're in a meeting or you're working on plan review, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people interrupt you several times a day or a couple of times a week to introduce new concepts. So we do jot them down and we consider them in the weekly retros, but this is also our opportunity for a formulated response to those concerns or to those new ideas so that it's not disruptive to the overall process and it can be well accounted for systematically, if you will. And then we do have the project managers participate in pre-development meetings, which then inform the permitting process later on. I also want to highlight an example of our production boards. This is for the East team. So if you all are familiar with a Kanban board in any capacity, we do pull from a couple of different project management methodologies, including Agile and Kanban. So this overviews all of our projects for one team.
One out of every 4 words. You know, I mean, I just,
Mr. Hogan is not familiar with conduct.
yeah, so, go on, keep on going.
I'm glad it's.
Two-
I'll pretend I understand.
So what this does is it provides a complete picture for a single team, a commercial review team, of all of the projects that we have to review, ones that we've reviewed and put on hold, and ones that we've reviewed, are ready for pickup, and have not been issued. It's laid out so that the primary focus is on what's outstanding for review and what is currently being reviewed. So if I know it's difficult to see on this projector, but if you're able to catch it at all, we have all of the projects that are initial review that are currently being reviewed, and then all of the projects that we have received resubmissions for and are being re-reviewed. And then we moved into a couple of different statuses, transmittal review being a secondary review status for projects that are being reviewed by Chief Elton Davis. And then projects that are ready for issue and then waiting on applicant, because we always want to keep the projects that we're actually reviewing at the forefront of our focus, that alongside projects that we have not gotten to already. So that said, we have a couple of different key pieces of information that allow us to use this tool effectively. One of them being a quick identifier for the project aside from their address, because we can have multiple projects at an address. Its application number, the project manager assigned to the project, its respective status, the type of permit it is, it's the project's start date and due date based on our review objectives. We've also added a column for projects that have received some sort of escalation, so that we are already aware that, you know, you're getting the calls, I'm getting the calls, something is happening outside of our typical normal review process. We have a secondary identifier for projects at the airport, at the mall, and at SU, because we often get requests in clusters from those organizations. We also have a column for the applicable zoning review as just a quick identifier. Outstanding approvals, a section for notes, a direct link for project plans, and then a recently incorporated point system, which will allow us to use analysis for our workloads to be able to really pin down a cap for our workloads each week. We're looking to have better triaging for that and to make that a little bit more sophisticated, but that at least gives us a breakdown of what our workload looks like across teams, because you can have 10 projects assigned to each team, but they're not going to be similar in scope. You can have 5 of those on one team be small interior build outs and 5 new construction, and then, you know, in theory, the other team can have 10 new construction altogether. So their time is going to be distributed unevenly. So that's a new feature, and again, just in addition to that, we have opportunities to include notes here. And all of our plans examiners have direct access to these boards, so they're not just used by the project managers. These are used by everybody. I am looking at the boards all day, every day. I have them on my phone. So I do know what's going on, and I'd like to stay in the know. But it also speaks to the level of transparency that we have across different departments, as you saw, but then also with me directly as well. And I can see that on the go. I'm able to monitor development on projects, and also speaks to the level of technology that we've brought into this equation over time. You know, going back to what Jake said earlier, we went from not being able to, or pulling certain plan sets from other mounds of paper, to having this level of sophistication in only a short amount of time.
From the customer's point of view, is there like a portal or some sort that they can identify what stage their project is in?
Yeah, so our GoPost portal, where they submit their plans, has preliminary statuses. I've included this at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, but one of the things that we're working on currently is an internal and external dashboard. One of my biggest frustrations in all of the improvements that we've made so far is, you know, you show up at the DMV, you grab a ticket, and you know where you are in line. We've had no, aside from that GoPost visibility into when they submit plans and the appropriate status that is attributed to the project, we haven't had transparency into not only a project team's individual application, but also when we say we're currently maybe backlogged because of the volume of requests, they also don't have transparency into what that looks like. So I could just be saying anything, really, and that doesn't necessarily sit well with me. I think that we have an opportunity to provide that level of transparency with our applicants, and so it's something that we're working on, and hopefully will be live by the end of the quarter.
So just a quick question, when fire has their part to review, do they go into that ClickUp system, or how do they get the materials to review?
So yes, they would access it using that link. When projects are assigned, it's the plans examiners assigned to the project receive an email notification, but then looking at a complete picture, they're also able to supplement that and click on that direct link within the production board as well.
Okay, so everybody has a different view depending on who you are and what your role is in the permitting
Yes.
process. But you have the total bird's eye, and you can see
So
all of the details.
the bird's eye view that you saw, they have direct access to, and then the plan set specifically exist separately, but they're hyperlinked in the production board so that they have direct access to them. And then I have not included this in the PowerPoint, but one of the tools that we've used over the last couple of years, I know that you've all heard extensively about our transition to Microsoft 365 and Teams, but prior to that, we use Slack, which is a free technology tool. This board is actually linked to Slack, which we use for professional instant messaging. I also have that on my phone. It's a great way for me to keep in contact with my staff at all times during the business day. But when a project status changes, we have separate channels that are set up for each commercial review team, and they get an immediate notification about anything that's happening on this board. But it's also a quick way, short of sending an email, for the project team to comment on a project. And so we have, again, a pretty comprehensive, sophisticated project management system with pretty high transparency throughout the day.
So really quick, I just want to sum this up maybe with a little less detail, but again, in context of where we came from, where we are today, and where we're going. So again, as a reminder, the city never had any project managers hired in any department, let alone with not the title, but a process like this. So it was a first for the city, and this really is a very sophisticated process. But permitting review and approval is not easy. It's a challenging technical skill. And back to your comment, Councilor Hogan, on design professionals, if they were always correct, we wouldn't need to have a job. I'm just going to be honest. If they submitted everything that they were supposed to and built everything the way they were supposed to, we wouldn't need plan reviewers. We wouldn't need inspectors. So again, it's not an exciting process, but it's a necessary process to ensure safety, but also to drive development and to drive growth for our community. But, again, it's our most important task is life safety. And, I like to use movie quotes, but if you've ever seen A Few Good Men, when he's up on the stand and it's like, you need me on that line, you want me on that line, like, we perform a essential task to keep people safe.
Campaign slogan.
I mean, we, I already trademarked it, but no, just kidding. But like, seriously, like, we don't want to be on the news for a building collapse, and that stuff happens. That happened in Vegas at the Hard Rock.
In this city.
We are really preventing disaster every day, and we are just as much public safety as police and as fire. We are like the unsung first responder, and we've started to change that a little bit, not only within permitting but code enforcement as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of that. But in the last part of this whole process really holds everybody accountable. My first couple months as permit director 4 years ago, whoever was making the most noise, I was working on it.
Right.
All right, that was not equitable. That was not fair. But it was, I'm telling you, the spiderweb mess I walked into was just, you couldn't even fathom what it was like. Nobody really knew. I thought I knew after working here for so long what I was getting into, and I was surprised at how much of a mess it was. So we're trying to create the most equitable process, whether you have a $500 million project or a $10,000 project, that you're important to the city of Syracuse. And we're representing you as a civil servant, providing you with a service. So this is what this does. And, again, it's not where we want it. We're not sitting here saying this is perfect and we've gotten to where we want to be, but we've come a very, very long way. And we'll continue to, 3.5 years from now, when this administration's term ends, like, this is going to be even light years ahead of where we're sitting today. I guarantee it.
So I wanted to wrap up with a direct insight into our two major pieces of technology, that being our plan review software and Camino, our permit management software. So we took a look at the boards themselves and the hyperlinks to the plans. This is what this software looks like. It's a highly sophisticated, short of using Adobe PDF, I'm sure you all are familiar with that. This enables our plans examiners to use tools that are relevant to plan review specifically in order to be able to conduct reviews digitally, instead of taking out a ruler and sorting through hundreds of pages or dozens of pages on plan review tables. I will just pull up an example of a project. So for each project, this is for Taco Bell.
I was about to say, I was going to say on that one. You said Hogan, Chole's not here. Set it off.
Set it off.
So each project has a couple of different tabs that provide relevant information for the project. One being the details section that provides basic information about a project. But what I would really like to look at is the plans themselves and what plans look like for our plans examiners. You all hear about plans. This is what they look like for our plans examiners. And here are all of the tools in the toolbox that make their plan review possible. This is a recent submission, so we don't have a second submittal, but What this also does is that it allows for any consecutive resubmissions to easily and seamlessly layer on top of any previous submission. So we can look at 2 pages, we can overlap pages, and then again, this is a recent submission, but where we have comments, they would be tabbed on each page and would be able to be easily accessible here on the right-hand side. And so they can zoom, they can measure, they can highlight, they can put in comments. Anything that they could do on paper is made possible by this plan review software.
This is really cool, by the way. I know it seems a little boring, but like you can scale things on here. You can like the coolest thing is overlaying. Like you submit a page a month later and it'll show you in 2 different colors what's different. And you can see, oh, like they moved this wall over here. Like it's really, really sophisticated. It's really, really modern.
That's cool.
And what we're doing with this is really, really cool. Nationwide, we're getting some attention with this. It's really awesome.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
You know, and Heather, it might be pertaining to you as well. So I know in some cities, when you go and you look at some of the plans that they have and the build they have a certain criteria on how the buildings are put up and the aesthetics with the neighborhood and things like that. Do we do that? Do we look at the area and figure out how the building should actually fall in place with the line of what the buildings look like?
I know we do on James Street.
Yeah, so we have we have a couple of different regulations. So obviously we have the New York State building code, but then we also have zoning regulations, and then depending on where the project is, if there are any landmark preservation requirements or concerns. Heather, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, it might be fair to say like some projects will start with like a specific project site review on what it's going to look like, how it fits into a neighborhood, and then we'll get into the.
Right. That's my
As far
Heather-
as the
Heather can
building
elaborate,
code, that does not necessarily address aesthetic requirements or concerns.
Well, I was trying to hide,
Yeah.
but yes, so really what you're looking at is should be after zoning.
Okay.
This, we're reviewing what was approved by us. If these are different, we put a little comment and say, sorry.
But I was just wondering about
Yes.
the aesthetics of a neighborhood.
Yep, so through our different reviews, you've got special permits, you've got project site reviews, James Street overlay is site plan review, so is the lakefront. They have specific design standards. Project site review evaluates the salient characteristics. So if you have 2 buildings and a vacant lot, we're going to look at what do the 2 buildings look like, the good qualities of those 2 buildings. We don't want to replicate something that isn't consistent with quality neighborhood character. So hopefully if people either apply for a permit or come to our office first, we'll send them through the appropriate review, and any exterior alterations we review, and say Taco Bell, that special permits include design review. They act like project site reviews and then some, because special permits are a special look. It's something that's allowed by right, but we need to take a special look at the who, what, when, where, why, and how it's designed, how it functions, what is the land use, what does it look like, does it fit in with the character? So the short answer is yes, and that's all.
Okay, because I know when I went to Hilton Head, the whole little area, it was all this like the same, but then they had the whole complex where they had the big trees to keep them from being on the roadside. So I was just curious.
Yeah, so that's where design standards come in. That's where, when we get an application, which is well before this process, hopefully, the person submits to us, we send it out to engineering, DPW, transportation planning. So we get the arborist, we get all those comments beforehand, or they've come in, they've set up a pre-development meeting where we're all sitting around the table and they get comments before they even submit to us. So it's almost like 3 times our team at the city gets to comment on those types of things, the buffering, the landscaping, the stormwater management, the access in and out of places, the design, the land use. So we wait for those comments, and then we send them out to the developer. They revise their plans accordingly or not. And it's when that they don't revise them accordingly, they might get to the planning commission, and the planning commission will say, you really need to revise this to address the concerns of the arborist or the transportation planner or engineering. So there are checkpoints along the way. I can't say that everything is designed perfectly as far as aesthetic, but we do have some design standards in some neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
And this is why that cross-functional collaboration and review is important, so that we're not only meeting life safety standards, but we're also meeting any applicable standards as they pertain to design standards in the community.
So just for a quick time check, we only have about 4 minutes left, but obviously we can go a little over that, but I don't want to go into 4 o'clock.
So good on time.
Okay.
My last piece of information aside from our next steps and looking ahead is an insight into our permit management, our new permit management system. So we have currently on-prem software for permit and zoning and complaint management. However, we have started a transition to complete digitization of applications which now live in Camino. We have a couple, a little over a dozen permit application types in Camino so far, and we're working iteratively to digitize more applications, meaning more permits, a couple more periodic inspections, and all licenses as well. So this is, I'd like to just quickly pull up an example.
While she's doing that, I just want to, again, make this a quick summary of what this actually is. So this is a web-based software, a SaaS model, software as a service. This is where technology is going. To put it into comparison to what we have, this is a brand new leased car and will always be a brand new maintained leased car, always. IPS, what we're trying to get off of, is now a 12-year-old used clunker that we're band-aiding monthly. That's the best way to describe the change in technology and what this does and what it delivers for our internal users, but more importantly, our external users.
Yeah, so this is just an example of a rental registry application that was submitted. So we have all of the appropriate information fields that are completed, the appropriate statuses, a couple of high-level pieces of information over here. We also have a direct view into a Google map of the property in question, an opportunity to upload documents, payment information, and then activity. We also, for each step, have the ability to edit fields if we need to.
So this is all customizable, and it's intuitive, it's easy to use. It has an internal chat feature. Like, we had an application for a rental registry a couple of weeks ago, and the applicant put something in the chat, they had a question, and I just typed back, and they got their answer.
So I'd like to just highlight that feature quickly. So for each step, as Jake mentioned, we do have a chat feature, so we can put in either an internal note or a quick message to our applicants, letting them know, hey, even for applications. So this also allows us to have direct visibility into applications that haven't even been submitted. So we monitor those. So somebody can start an application, and let's say they're struggling with an application and it's taking them a couple of hours. We parse through unsubmitted applications daily just to make sure that we have all the pieces of information that we need submitted. But we'll call, we'll message, and it's been really helpful to help plug in information to get them across the finish line to actually submit. So I'd like to just quickly wrap up here, given that we're short on time, and just talk about a couple of things that we're currently working on and the future of permitting and licensing. So we're currently working on filling our bench. We have a couple of vacancies that we need to fill, including a senior project manager, a floating project manager, and an additional plans examiner one to help support residential plan review, because we currently only have one residential plans examiner. I briefly spoke about the internal and external dashboard reporting. That's something that we're working on. Internal meaning for my needs, for my management, high level and granular overview of projects. We're working on a permit guide that will live in Camino. Hopefully that will be wrapped up by August, so it would allow applicants to preview zoning for their project. In addition to that, also preview permit requirements and associated fees. And as we digitize each application, it will then allow, for applicants that are ready to move to the next step, it will allow them to actually initiate an application right then and there. This is all part of our ongoing maintenance cost with Camino, and so it just plugs right into the services that we already have. So no extra cost, just a different configuration. And then making sure that we're also considering further opportunities for cross-functional permitting improvement projects. Right now, we're working on improving our permitting process in the right-of-way. So that's something that we've been working on for past couple of months. We've met with design professionals, construction teams, we've met with internal reviewers to take a look at, because under the permitting priority area, we largely focus on commercial permitting, and we had an opportunity to start looking at what are our issues in the right-of-way and work on a couple of potential solutions to issues that we see come up. I also spoke a little bit about our adaptive project triaging. So I mentioned the point system. We'd like to flesh that out a little bit further and provide more objective standards for triaging project management, in addition to what we already use objectively. And then we're currently working on ongoing application digitization. Right now, we're working on digitizing our certificate of inspection applications, as well as our demolition permit applications. We continue to digitize, and we will for the foreseeable future. We're also considering third-party plan review at some point to help offset our volume that we see increasing over time, and that will most likely continue to evolve and grow. Prior to that, we need to have a couple of different systems in place, including all of the evolution that needs to take place for triaging and increasing our standards for project management, so that we can get to a point where we have a seamless plug into third-party plan review should we need it. We'd like to also use more analysis, so that if we are engaging third-party plan review, and if we are potentially coming to you all for a request for funding, if necessary, that we have a real need for it and a plan, a comprehensive plan for what that even looks like. And then just continuous procedural streamlining, whether it's on an ongoing weekly basis or a new project altogether, cross-functionally with other departments, with the Office of Innovation, with digital services. We are striving to continuously improve, and we have quite a long road ahead of us, but we've done so much in such a short amount of time, relatively speaking. But we have high standards of ourselves, and this is important to our community development, and so it's important that we get this right, and that we get it right once and for all.
So first I want to thank you guys for being very innovative and looking at a process and trying to make it better. That's not common in municipal government, so I'm grateful for that. So just kind of to circle back on the timeline. So let's say someone submits an application, they have their intake meeting, which it sounds like can be from a few days to 2 weeks, somewhere in that range. Then they submit, and then the project management period comes, and understanding that it depends on how complete the submission is and how responsive they are, but what's a range for how long that takes for the permit to come back?
So it depends on the permit type. So for renovation, remodel, and changes of occupancy, it's a 6-week objective that was set forth under the current administration. For new construction, it's 8 weeks, and that also includes site work. For interior demolitions, it's 1 to 2 business days. So while we have those objectives, that also doesn't mean that we are able to stretch out plan review so that we're neck and neck with those objectives. That means that is our objective, but depending, again, season, volume, if we're able to turn permits around and issue them within a week or 2, we're doing that. And that I'm also, on the project management side of things, we have certain standards that are much more granular than what you've seen so far too, in that once all approvals are in place, the expectation is that permit is fully closed out that same day. There's no, it's going to take another 2 weeks or another 2 days or any of that we are moving right on the ball. And when we're getting those approvals, those are also being directly sent out to the applicants, so they're aware. So if you will have a project and you're seeing that all the approvals are in place, your expectation is then that permit will be ready for issue that same day, and you'll be able to quickly pick up on that.
And are those timelines comparable to best practices around the country?
Yes, that's where they were pulled from. Yep.
That was something that we dove into with the innovation team initially upon the focus area for permitting. And I know a lot of people you might hear a lot of noise like, well, I can go here and get this in X amount of time. A lot of that is total BS. I'll just be honest.
Yeah, that's been a pretty constant one. But you
might hear, I go to this small town and I can build a burned dairy and get approval in a week. Well, maybe because there's one person working there and they're just kind of rubber stamping things. That's not happening here.
And it's probably one project happening.
Right.
Which is
But,
right.
Yeah.
to put this in perspective, Salt City Market, we were just under 8 weeks from start to end for total approval. And that was by far the fastest we've ever issued a new commercial construction project from the ground up, ever. By far. We beat it by maybe 8 weeks. Before I started, that would have taken 16 to 20 weeks minimum, if not longer. And it's still not where it needs to be overall, because there's certainly projects that we fail to meet that objective, but we live and breathe this every day. When I set out to take over the permit job 4 years ago, the goal was to make it the best in the country, and not just the fastest, because that doesn't mean you're the best. Like, we could sit here and issue things all day, but again, you don't want that. We are protecting life safety, and that is our job. So I think in the end, what I guess we want is a model that I think can be replicated elsewhere. And maybe we're not performing where we want to be today, but it's being recognized nationally. I want you all to know that. Like, people are seeing what Syracuse is doing. People that have jobs, so what can we do to improve permitting? They're seeing Syracuse and they're like, wow, look at what they're doing. And they're reaching out and we're having meetings and we're getting job offers to go to other cities.
Yeah, better not leave.
And we're charging them?
Well, listen, we're set out to carry this out. Like, this is something that we take very seriously. And I'd hard press all of you to see, is there anybody else who's more accessible than Madiha and I? Because I respond on nights, weekends, text, email, same day, usually within the hour. And that's how it will always be. And we'll be straight up with all of you. Like, are we perfect? No, but we're sure as hell going to try to get there.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, I absolutely just want to echo that. You've been incredibly responsive, both of you, and I really appreciate that. I guess my question is now, like, so often in government, it's like, I always say it's like turning a big ship, right? Like, the lead legislation that took 3 years to write will not be implemented for another 2 to 3. We won't see the effects of it being implemented for another 2 to 3 years. So I guess I'm just wondering, you guys have done a tremendous job. I know there's, I know stories from so many different layers of government where they've tried to go from paper to digitizing, and most of the staff just quit and was like, we're not going to do this. And it's too big of a lift, and so I really appreciate both of you and what you've done. But do you think that as the system gets, is this in the pipeline to be, we're also looking at a year where, I believe you said it was typical year was 1.8 and we're at 2.8 or something, or?
185, and now we're at $258 million.
Right. So you're looking at a 40% increase in traffic this year over an average year. So it's probably not a good year to have a measuring stick. But to Councilor Green's point about those goals of 6 weeks to 8 weeks, those kinds of things, do we think as there'll be more fat trimmed off as this becomes more better implemented, rolling better? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not to just push back on the wonderful presentation you guys just gave, but do we think that times will shorten in the coming years as this becomes more streamlined?
So I'll answer. Absolutely. I think especially on the commercial renovation side, we're really going to focus on existing spaces that are doing interior build outs and really try to improve those. New construction, brand new, from a vacant lot to site work to a building up in the air.
It takes time.
8 weeks is pretty good. Like, we'll certainly evaluate it, but to answer the question overall, yes, but specifically on the commercial renovation side, you want to do a build out on something that exists already. All right, we really want to chop that down a little bit more, and that's going to be a big focus in particular. New construction, yeah, I mean, we want to be like a production plant that's producing at max efficiency. Short of, we don't just want to throw bodies at this either.
Yeah.
But if that's what it comes to and we reach that point and it's like we want to add some positions, like that's something we'll come to you with.
Yeah, that was
come budget time.
Yeah, it was basically capacity and staffing, because I know it's always a challenge in city government on every level, but you guys feel good about.
We need to iron out process. We need to iron out process and existing people and positions before we start throwing more people at it. We may get there at some point. We may get there and say, we need this or that, but we're working on other things that need to be established first before that option even is brought up.
I think we got to be cognizant, as Medea says about cross-functionality. As long as you don't control the whole process, sometimes it's going to, you don't control. Sometimes those other people in those other departments have priorities that are different than yours. So sometimes it seems like that holds up the whole project.
That's
and
something.
That's just the way it's going to work out until maybe we'll get more positions where you have a fireman just does this, and you have like a sewer person who just does this, and maybe you have a water department person who just does this.
We're overlooking nothing. Everything's on the table. We'll continue to work hard on this daily, little steps, baby steps every day, but we'll also look at big changes too and what we can do to make this the best process it can be.
It's way better. I was here before, and so was President Hudson, and it's like, this is a whole new world.
Reams of paper.
Yeah.
Reams of paper, people calling me up that they haven't got through, getting all mixed up, coming to pre-development meetings that were just awful, crazy, because nobody knew about who had done anything. Everything was still in silo. So it's way better.
I just want to go back to Councilor Driscoll's questions. So all of the changes that we've implemented so far have enabled us the opportunity to actually even recognize where bottlenecks exist. And when I say that this is a living, breathing organism that needs to continue to evolve, the fat needs to continue to be trimmed. And then when we've seen it already come up, Jake mentioned the smaller interior build outs, without an opportunity to actually even get the bulk of our operations organized, we wouldn't have been able to even see that. We hear it from our constituents, but more objectively see that this is where our major bottlenecks are, and that perhaps we need to take a second look at how we permit smaller interior build outs, and that sometimes we're not comparing apples to apples. And so we'll just continue to do that. We're already thinking about it. There's very little out there that we haven't thought about, if anything at all. It's just a matter of how do we get there, and how do we get there without just throwing more money at a problem, because that is not only impractical, it's not appropriate.
So there could be a fast track phase?
Potentially.
Are those 3 open positions civil service, or are they?
One of them is civil service, two are not.
Most positions are civil service throughout the entire department. Permits probably has some more that are not than codes, other than the management side within codes. But just to answer your question a little bit more in depth.
Appreciate it.
So what would be the average time if I say want to put up a fence? What would be the average time to get my permit?
For a residential property, it should be over the counter.
Oh,
Like,
cool.
same day, so walk in and out.
Unless you're trying to do something that is contradictory to zoning regulations,
Or an encroachment, something
Yep.
that out in the right of way.
But otherwise, it would be counter.
correct.
I mean, Counselor Allen did it. How long? I mean, we did it over email, so it was a little bit.
Mine is a little different because I emailed them at like 10 o'clock at night. I didn't know that I had to do that. So I emailed them at like 10
Did you get it at
on a
10:30?
Friday.
Did you get it at 10:30?
And I
Monday
got it
morning.
Monday morning at like 8:30. So it was quick. It was.
Driveways, same thing. And, some of the complaints and comparisons that we're seeing, we have folks who come in and say, oh, I pulled a permit in such and such county. Well, it was a residential over the counter, much like we process here. We can't necessarily compare that to a change of occupancy for a full restaurant build out.
And I was surprised how fast the process was because I wasn't sure like what all I had to do. And they were like, no, you just send this or whatever. So I'm like scrambling, about to cry because I thought I was going to be able to get
Yeah.
my fence. And it was easy. So, and my fence is up. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Well, we're always available. I know, I'll speak for Mediha because I know she is too. Call, text, email. We're
Please.
hardworking daily, so.
Right. And don't leave.
Remember
Don't go.
remember the good stuff that we do when people are complaining too.
Absolutely. We got your back.
We get beat up a lot, but
So yeah, we're all in the same boat. All right. Well, thank you guys. This is very
Thank you.
informative. Thank you, Driscoll, for staying on top of this and appreciate your time.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, I've been here too.
Do I need a